Welcome back. Covering a lot of ground with Congressman Hakeem Jeffries from Brooklyn. Let me ask you, because one of the things that's been important, you both as a state legislator, is what you call overcriminalization. We're at a period right now of some tension between the NYPD and the community. What are your thoughts on that? I know that you sit in Washington, but obviously you represent constituents in Brooklyn.
Yes, well, I've got the privilege of being on the Judiciary Committee's bipartisan task force on overcriminalization. 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, wide ideological diversity, but all of us committed to trying to reform the criminal justice system in a manner that makes it fairer, that reduces the amount of time that people are unnecessarily spending behind bars. In the federal prison system right now, 50% of the individuals who are locked up are nonviolent drug offenders. Less than 10% actually committed violent offenses. And in many communities, such as those that I represent, particularly in areas like East New York and Ocean Hill, Brownsville, Bedford-Stuyvesant, parts of Coney Island, those constituents of mine have been victimized by overcriminalization, by the law and order policies that were first put in place in the late 90s. We're in a period of greater safety, peace, and prosperity, certainly in New York City, but there have to be some dividends paid in terms of communities benefiting. That's why I think it's going to be important both for the national conversation to continue to take place, and we've got to figure out a way to deal with the NYPD's broken windows policing strategy that appears to disproportionately target communities of color.
You're behind something called PJs Act for 6-year-old Prince Joshua Avita, who was stabbed along with his 7-year-old playmate in a Brooklyn housing development. Tell us about that.
Well, that was a very tragic incident that rocked the conscience of New York City. PJ was brutally stabbed in an elevator, and unfortunately, in the aftermath, we determined that there were no cameras in that elevator or anywhere on that development, which complicated the police's ability to actually find the killer and may have created conditions that allowed for that tragedy to take place at the outset. One of the things that we have recently done is introduce what we call PJs Act with the support of his mom, the family, as well as the pastor, which is to open up the opportunity for federal resources to come to the New York City Public Housing Authority for the acquisition and maintenance of security cameras, of enhanced lighting, of safety locks. Currently, the federal government has largely divorced itself, making sure that the safety needs of public housing residents are provided. Between 1991 and 2001, the federal government provided approximately $310 million per year to deal with the safety needs of public housing residents across the country. In 2013, that number was $20 million, with grants limited to $250,000 per public housing entity. That is woefully inadequate, and that's why we've introduced PJs Act, which would open up an additional funding stream that NYCHA could get access to make sure that the public housing safety needs of its residents are provided.
Yeah, a report this week that NYCHA's in some pretty dire financial straits. Got about a minute left. You ran unopposed in the primary earlier this year. You will run for re-election in November in a heavily Democratic district against an opponent who lacks name recognition. We can't predict the outcome, but likely that you'll return now, for another term. What do you hope to do differently? How are you going to try to ease this gridlock as just one young congressman?
Well, I am going to spend some time in October trying to help the Democratic minority in the House right now become the Democratic majority, because I think that's good for the district that I represent as well as for the American people. But I am again prepared to work with Republicans on both the House side, throughout the Capitol, and to continue to work with the White House. I'm just hopeful, regardless of what the outcome is in November, that everyone gets back to Washington and says, let's focus on the business of the American people and leave partisan politics behind.
Okay. All right. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, his freshman year. Thanks for stopping by, man.